Everyone, and this meeting will be recorded. I'm Terry Shaffer. I serve as the government chair for the Evolving the Workforce Community of Interest, and really want to thank all of you for joining us today. We have a fantastic panel. Unfortunately, Matisha Montgomery is sick and will not be with us today. She was trying to rally, but said she was losing her voice and just couldn't make it. So she's sorry she can't be here. And we hope she has a very quick recovery. So I'm going to turn it over in just a few minutes to Derek Hager, who's going to be our program moderator today. But I would first like to hand the mic over to Joe Paiva. Joe just joined our leadership team as the Evolving the Workforce COI's industry vice chair. So he just began his role at the beginning of July. So Joe, would you like to say hi to the members?
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited. I think this is going to be awesome. I know we have some great projects going last year, and I just look forward to really being able to dig in this year and do as much as I can. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Joe. And Joe has been serving as the industry lead on the DEIA project that we have well underway. So we're working through the final stages, and we'll have a report coming out in the next few months. So look forward to that. Thank you, Joe, for all your hard work on that. So I will now turn it over to Derek. Derek, it is all yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Joe. Hello, everybody. My name is Derek Hager. I am your moderator today for this discussion. I'm a member of the Evolving Workforce Program Committee here at ACT-IAC and an industry representative for my company, WalkMe. It's my role today to facilitate this discussion, guide us through the next hour, and mostly to make sure you as the audience get your needs met. We've got some great topics and, more importantly, some great perspectives on these topics. So I know you're going to be engaged. So what's in store for you? Well, first, let me introduce our panel. Then we're going to dive right into several topic areas related to training and learning in this new hybrid world. There's going to be Q&A allowed throughout the session. So stay engaged and feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them as quickly as possible. So with that being said, let me begin by introducing our panelists. First, Joellen Jarrett, Chief Learning Officer, Division Chief, Organizational Effectiveness in the Office of Human Resources Solutions at the U.S. Small Business Administration. Joellen brings to the table over 29 years in public, private, and federal experience in talent and organization development, strategic planning, competency development, program management, performance management, change management, supervisory training, mentoring, coaching, and leadership development. Her federal experience includes work with the Department of the Air Force, National Security Agency, Department of Energy, Department of Interior, and Defense Intelligence Agency. Joellen joined the Small Business Administration in August of 2015 as the agency's first Chief Learning Officer and Director of Organizational Effectiveness within the Office of Human Resources Solutions. Joellen directs the agency's talent development and performance management programs, as well as SBA's engagement, work life, telework, and remote work activities. In her current role, she has a number of initiatives related to the future of work and our evolving federal workforce. Joellen, it's great to have you. Our second panelist, Lawan Bryan-Beveridge, affectionately known as LBB, began her role as Chief Learning Officer for the Department of Commerce in 2018. In her 32 years of federal service, she has held many impactful roles within the federal sector. Throughout each of these roles, she has helped to shape learning and development programs, as well as learning management systems and processes, publicly servicing employee populations from 1,600 to over 50,000 currently at the Department of Commerce. Her mission, increasing training and development opportunities for all. LBB is an active member of the Federal Chief Learning Officers Council and currently serves as the chair for the council. As a change agent, acts intentionally to build a shared vision with others, translating vision to action. LBB, within her current and previous roles, continuously sets the dynamics and collaboratively leverages organizational strategic priorities. Passion lies in the areas of human resources and training and development. LBB is committed to service excellence, providing much needed support to people within the department, and leads a talented group of professionals in the area of talent development. LBB, it's great to have you. So first topic is pretty basic. We're doing updates on the state of hybrid. topic's constantly changing. So you may have answered it before, but your answer may change. So LBB, let me start with you. How has training and learning changed? And if you could, just give us an update on the state of hybrid at your organization.
Thanks, Derek, and thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to speak with you guys today. So I think at Commerce, we are no different. We literally, I was very proud of our learning leaders here within the organization because we definitely switched on a dime. We've been doing blended learning for a while. So really to go from a blended learning approach to most things being online, it wasn't easy, but we got it done. I'm so proud of the folks that I get the honor to be their chief learning officer at this department, because whenever we have the call and I put it out, they get it done, and we just lock and step together. Have we had challenges? Absolutely, and I'm sure several other agencies can say the same, because technology, right? Our technology wasn't quite up to where we needed to be, but they've come with us lock and step, and we just look forward to continuing to move forward and give what we need for our organization.
That's wonderful. Joellen, let me go to you for a kind of an update on the state of hybrid at your organization. And maybe if you could share how much in-person versus online training you guys are doing as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Derek. And I echo LBB's gratitude for the opportunity to talk with you all today and just share some of our experiences, what we're seeing, and our thoughts on path forward. We are doing no in-person learning right now, unless it's happening outside of my office, and I don't know about it. We are not doing any face-to-face delivery right now. Everything is virtual, and it actually has been going quite well. We have not only economically, I think, benefited, from a budget perspective, all of the travel dollars that were spent previously to, transport people across the United States to be in a supervisory training program. Those dollars have now been kind of put back into making sure that we're doing our utmost to deliver quality training in a live virtual platform. And so everything from supervisory training to the compliance-based certifications required for our business opportunity specialists and our cores and all of that, all the FACC training, it's all virtual.
And how about engagement on virtual? Is there a lack of engagement? It seems like it's going well for you guys. Is that the case, Joellen?
I think it is going well. It's an interesting question. I think I'd like to see more of the stats with regard to, no shows in the brick and mortar delivery versus no shows in the virtual environment. Obviously, if we fly somebody across the United States to sit in a class, chances are they're going to end up in the seat in the classroom. As to their engagement, that's yet to be seen, because they're here in the DC area, or they're wherever they are in an office space that they haven't been in. They're trying to multitask. Here now in the virtual environment, it's kind of business as usual for folks, and so we stress that they make time. We stress that folks are engaged. And based on the evaluations that we're seeing and the level of recidivism that we're seeing in terms of people signing up for training, I think it's being well received.
Mm-hmm.
LBB, you mentioned technology. How is technology helping your employees and your learners, and/or are there ways it's hurting and inhibiting that learning process?
So I think I can answer that one, Derek, twofold. So when I think about some of our learners who are excited about IT, I don't think it's been much of a challenge. But for those who not so much, it's like who would prefer that in-person, instructor having a conversation with them, I think it might have been a challenge. And I agree with Joellen, the engagement piece. And we try to say to our folks, when you're in training, it's just when you're in training and you're doing it virtual, it's just like as if you were in the classroom. Like, be engaged. Turn your cell phones off, stop reading emails. But of course, that probably was happening when we was in person, right? And so just really trying to set the standards for our students to ensure that they're getting what they need from the learning. And we know, some of the discussions that we've had, that's a long time sometimes to be sitting in a classroom trying to learn. And one of the things that I kind of appreciate with some of our vendors is they really have tried to put an effort into trying to make sure that the trainings were engaging, and people are responsive, breaking them out in work teams and things like that. So, we're still learning, right? Because we had to do this on the dime. So we're eventually continuing to try to improve the process, especially with our tools. We love the fact that Microsoft Teams now has the collaborative whiteboard and things like that. So as we share with our IT, hey, this is what we kind of need to make our jobs better, I think things will continue to improve. But each federal organization is at a different pace, and that's one thing that we are currently talking about at the Federal Chief Learning Officers Council, trying to see how we can kind of set the standards and help each one teach one.
What about you, Joellen? How's technology playing a role at SBA for your learners?
Yeah, thank you. I think early on the struggle was lack of consistency. We've leveraged everything from Zoom to Adobe Connect to Microsoft Teams to WebEx. And so we really have given our OCIO a run for their money in terms of helping us flex so that people are able to access all of those different platforms. And over the course of the last couple of years, we have tried very hard to get our vendors to kind of move toward, maybe just 1 or 2 platforms instead of 5 or 6. And then the other piece, to LBB's point, is making sure that as we made the transition from live classroom face-to-face to the virtual classroom instructor-led, that vendors are understanding adult learning principles still apply, but they apply differently. Running a 40-hour in-person class in the classroom is not the same when you transition it to a virtual delivery. And having someone sit for 40 hours and stare at a screen with no interaction, no whiteboard, no ability to do anything besides listen does not promote learning, from an adult learning perspective. So we've really tried hard to work with the vendors and make sure that they are building in, and when we are delivering it ourselves, that we are building in that motivation piece, that engagement piece, opportunities for them to poll or whiteboard, or even follow on kind of cohorts, bringing folks back together to re-engage in the learning so that, we kind of keep it alive in their minds and it doesn't just become an event. And honestly, that's probably a practice that was, well practiced prior to, it would have been well practiced prior to, but now it's kind of critical.
You said something, and you mentioned it too as well, Joellen, but LBB, you mentioned kind of the OCIO folks or the IT folks are handling remote and remote learning and training very well. And maybe that's due to a technical acumen. Are you having to kind of focus training on, skills and character as well as just technical application sides of it for different persona groups?
Oh, absolutely. And so we have a wonderful young woman, and I won't put her on the spot, who joined OCIO, and she worked lock and step with my deputy to do this massive push as related to the Microsoft Teams and the Office suites. And oh my goodness, I don't want to mess up the numbers, but I can tell you it was huge. It was magnificent, and really gave them the opportunity to kind of learn the different technologies that was coming down to play. And then we also have an amazing Commerce Learning Center. I have an amazing team that helps to support that across the bureaus, in each of the bureaus, who really, we go through, we set up anywhere from 12 to 15 initiatives a year to kind of say, okay, you know, what worked well, what didn't work well, what do we need to increase, where can we get the best bang for our buck, what did they like, what did they didn't like, you know, what we got to remove. So really just having, the one thing that I think we learned, especially coming out of COVID, was everyone had to be lock and step. No one was alone in this race. You gotta have a conversation. If something's not working in IT, you gotta let them know that, you know, it's not working, so you can get it fixed. And my learning leaders, you know, they were on it, because I have a team of chief learning officers, as well as a team of technical, we call them team administrators for the system. And they really lock in step to say, okay, this is what we need for our organization. Now, are we hitting it 100%? You know, sometimes we miss the mark, you know, but we learn from our lessons and we try to make it better the next time.
Yeah, it seems like with just, there's not one training plan that fits all. We're not all the same skill set or acumen, so that makes a lot of sense. We've got our first audience question. I'm going to dive in here. Okay. It says, I'm curious to know how you have asked your employees about their experiences, what inhibits engagement, what learning formats they prefer, so you can uncover the behavioral insights that could help you design for the learner. So it seems kind of what type of feedback are you getting from employees about their experience and learning formats they prefer? Joellen, you want to go first on this one?
Sure. So we do a couple of different things. Of course, you know, the level 1 feedback is standard, and we've incorporated questions with regard to the technology. Did it work? If it didn't work, what happened? And, you know, what kind of help did you get, to make sure we're covering that technology piece. But you know, surprisingly, the technology hasn't been the biggest impediment to engagement. The biggest impediment to engagement has been the workload. We've had such a high tempo of workload with regard to SBA and you know, all of the IDLE and the PPP and all of that, that it just is difficult. It is difficult for employees to feel able to take that time, even more so than in the past. And so it's been kind of a full court press to get supervisors to encourage employees, and they have risen to the task of encouraging employees to take the time, go to training, you know, focus on their professional development. And then we've also continued to try to do things like reducing the amount of time, so focusing more on micro engagements and giving people kind of some more just-in-time options, so that we can mitigate that I don't have time to learn. And then in terms of learning format preferences, we've incorporated in the talent development needs survey that we do on a regular annual basis. We've kind of incorporated additional questions about, you know, how do you learn best? What ways do you prefer? And surprisingly, the face-to-face is not at the top of the list. I mean, I really did expect that people would say, I have to be face-to-face. That's my preferred format. It actually is not necessarily the preferred format, but people do get wrapped around the axle when technology doesn't work. I get wrapped around the axle when technology doesn't work. So, you know, we just try to make sure that we're focusing on that. It's a great question.
LBB, do you have any feedback maybe about ways you're you know, taking the pulse of the employees and incorporating some of that feedback into learning formats?
So right now in our system, we're working on, I think they call it the STAR system, so people can kind of rate the training that they're taking. But our folks try to be as engaged as they possibly can. So really kind of, we have a 24/7 support system. And so if there's something that's going on or not working quite, especially in our CLC, they let us know about it. If they have an issue with something that gets pushed out, they let us know about it. One big push that we did when we went into COVID, we created quarterly announcements to really do marketing about the CLC, you know, and it's more, you know, because it was a big challenge of mandatory training. Oh, I'm just going in there to do mandatory training. And it was like, but we have hundreds and thousands of courses in there for you guys to go in. So we started this marketing strategy. So every quarter we would kind of go through and identify, okay, what did we see as hot topics? So we talked about like some of the stress, working from home. Some people don't have an office, it was their dining room table, for example. Some folks had children that they had to deal with. So we kind of really looked at the analogy across on how we could meet our employees and identify things that would help them like go. And we made some really awesome updates to some of our learning pages. We have a Bureau School page, which gives each of our bureaus an opportunity to really highlight some of their internal as well as external things that they do as outreach. And then we developed a professional school setting, which kind of outlines like all the hot topics. So HR, acquisitions, IT, and things like that. So we really tried to like switch to make sure that, okay, what is it that they're in need? If I'm putting myself in a customer's place, what kind of information am I looking for? What do I need? And we're ever evolving and changing in that process.
That's great to hear. And related to that question, we've got a question from Linda. Do people actually give you feedback? What is the percentage you get responses versus number of attendees? So I don't know if Joellen or LBB have any data, but could you share maybe, are you feeling some survey fatigue from your workers, or anything you can share on that, Joellen?
I will say survey fatigue is real. It does happen. There have been so many well-meant surveys out. I mean, because we need employees to plug in and give us feedback on lots of different things with regard to future of work. And we just finished up the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey and all of those things. But just anecdotally, Linda, in terms of training survey responses, the level 1 stuff, we probably average anecdotally, I think, better than 50%. I wish I could say 100%. It's not 100%. Some classes we get better feedback than others. So it, kind of depends on who's in the class. But I will say the Talent Development Needs Survey, that one response rates hover again, 40 to 50% at least. So, yeah.
I'm going to ditto her.
More. Yeah, please go ahead, LBB.
Yeah, I'm absolutely going to ditto her. And this, again, was something that was happening when we were in person, right? I think in the learning community, what we have learned, if they really hate it, they're going to let us know. And then we have some, if they really love it, they're going to let us know. And so we just try to kind of manage it in between. We just ask for grace, right? Because we're going through a shift and change, just like the employees are going through a shift and change, and really trying to define what their needs are and meet them at the individual level. It can be a challenge. And so, that's why we create these communities so that we can have these conversations. I had like 3 employee communities, when we talked about policy stuff and we talked about new initiatives and things like that, just to kind of hear their voices, but our folks are pretty vocal. If something ain't working, they let us know.
Yeah, I just took my car into the shop and I got a survey when it came back. I had a really good experience, so I just filled it out. But you're right, you're probably getting the best experience and the worst experience, and then you're missing out on a lot of voices in the middle. So let's move to voices and thinking about those employees from a kind of a employee health and wellness, avoiding burnout. So let me ask the question this way. I'll start with you, Joellen. Does your agency offer training that supports employee health and wellness to avoid burnout, hopefully improve productivity, and help employees create an inclusive environment? Let's start here with you, Joellen.
We absolutely do. We began at the beginning of COVID. My senior OD team lead came out and said, I'm concerned. This is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm seeing. And, we really need something in place to kind of help people manage in the midst of all of the stress, because our workforce was frontline with, small business owners who were very stressed. And so we actually created, and I'm sure she benchmarked and may very well have benchmarked some of LBP's programs, but we actually created and launched a program called Mindful Minutes. And we later on, with that just-in-time thought in mind, grew it into Mindful Moments. So we do 60-minute sessions monthly where we engage folks in different mindfulness habits. We, talk about biofeedback. We talk about resilience. We talk about, we talk about the busyness that gets in the way of us being able to really focus. We talk about grief and coping with grief, because that was a big thing that folks, feedback, people gave us feedback and said, hey, we need to talk about this. And so collaborating with my work life program manager, we actually did a grief series, and that's been a continuing thing. The mindful moments are 15-minute sessions that happen during the lunch hour, 2 or 3 times a week, where it is focused on just practicing a behavior, deep breathing, visualization, positive reinforcing, thoughts, words, whatever. Those are the kinds of things that they focus on in mindful moments. But it has been hugely well received. People initially, I think we were in the hundreds, and we've probably dialed back participation to 80 or 90 per session, which still for one of our programs is very good participation. So that's kind of what we've done. We've grown the work life program. I can't give you a percentage. I can just tell you it's grown by leaps and bounds. So we have increased work life offerings to make sure that people know what services are available, and to make sure that we're hitting, the critical pain points that we're hearing and seeing across the workforce. Grief being one of them, childcare, you name it. That was something that, yes, we had it in place prior to the pandemic, but I don't know that we really emphasized it the way we have. We know our people need support. We know that, in order for them to be productive and engaged, they need to be taken care of. And so the work life program, the mindful minutes and mindful moments programs are how we're trying to fill that need.
You, LBB, are you guys taking a similar approach?
Absolutely. And so what we have here is called right now Mindful NOAA, and we're getting ready to expand it to Mindful DOC. And I don't want to speak too soon, but there is something coming down the pike that's going to be Mindful Fed. And so it's coming. We are working diligently on getting that together. I have to shout out my Mindfulness NOAA team, because they're absolutely amazing. Just the information that they shared, and I echo what Joellen said. Some of our leaders really took to heart and really had some conversations with their folks. My boss, for example, she had a coffee chat. So every Wednesday at 9 o'clock, we had a coffee chat, and we didn't just talk about work. It was just like, how's your weekend? How's everything going? Because we are coming off a very stressful time. People have lost loved ones, friends. We're coming off a very stressful time. And so, no matter, I've been in the government 32 years, and I don't care how we do it, you cannot separate employees' personal life from the professional. And so if we take that mindset that we make sure we take care of the whole person, we will get a better bang for our buck. We wouldn't have those issues of performance, for example, because people who feel taken care of are committed to the mission, and they will get the job done. And so I think, and I mentioned to you before, like we would go through and we added, okay, so now, one topic might have been stress. The next topic might be health and wellness. We focused on some DEIA. So we really kind of would change here's some recommended training for you for this quarter, to really drive home that, we're here for you. If you have some questions, and definitely tagging with our EPA folks to make sure, EAP, I said that wrong, EAP folks, to make sure that, folks know you have that support. I think sometimes we get into this fear of, well, I don't want nobody to know that I'm having this challenge, or I don't want nobody to understand I'm going through these things, but we can't, it's real. Like, the struggle is real. And so we have to take care of our employees. And the only way you can do that is if you understand what's going on and you meet them where they are.
It sounds like both of these programs have grown pretty rapidly. So
Yes.
are either of you surprised by kind of the growth and the adoption of these programs? And where I go is, if something like that is that desired and wanted and needed, because we are all human and it should be, why didn't we have it in the past, right? Is there something we were missing? So thinking about kind of just the sentiment of employees in general, burnout, right? Retention are one, I would think that these things help with retention and attrition. Has anything changed with the kind of retention or attrition situation for you guys at FBA, Joellen, over the past year or so?
Because we've been in the throes of, rapid expansion with CARES Act, trying to address the mission, it's hard for me to answer that question because this has not been normal for us. So I really would hesitate to answer that question. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Share a similar stance, LBB, retention, attrition, things are kind of steady state. And
I'm definitely gonna say that with a caveat. So because as I have conversations with my senior leadership, the one thing that I always kind of go back to is probably maybe about 10, 15 years ago, we were supposed to have like this mad exodus, right? Yeah. So all of these folks were supposed to be, oh my gosh, we were supposed to be losing all this talent. And I don't know that we really did. So, I kind of asked my senior leaders, okay, I would want to know if the folks that are actually leaving, is it because of current situations, or is it really that, they have decided, okay, I've done everything that I can do in this setting. It's time for me to move on and let someone else take over. We don't have a high turnover rate here in the department. We actually ranked pretty high this year in the best places to work. So proud of that. And just looking at it from a standpoint of, that's where I think we got to do a little bit more digging in, because just because folks are eligible to leave doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready and willing to leave, and having those kind of in-depth conversations with them to say, okay, so are you really leaving because of this? Or are you leaving because, it's time, you have decided that you want to do your next life's journey. And so I don't know that we have data that kind of captures that piece. I think we kind of capture, LBB is eligible to retire in 2027. We need to get to her, but LBB might not be ready to leave in 2027. And so I think it can kind of be a mixed bag.
Yeah. And same here, Derek. I mean, yes, we've had retirements. Yes, we've had folks leave. Did they leave because they were temporary hires and their term ended? Did they leave to a better position elsewhere? Or did they simply retire because, 2 years into COVID, they decided that it was time? I don't have the actual reasons. It's been change.
Yeah. Yep. Well, speaking of the mindful moments and kind of the skills and character, how is training helping support some of the current DEIA initiatives and goals? Are there ways you can share that you guys are supporting some of those initiatives?
We are all up and through DEIA. I shared this with the council. There is a lot of things coming down the pike for training and development in relations to DEIA. So we talk about this monthly with the Federal Chief Learning Officer Council. So if you aren't connected, they hear me say this all the time, like a broken record. If you aren't connected, get connected. That is just like a positive way to impact some influence. But I would step back and also say, I feel my personal is that training, we've always been kind of tied to DEIA. We just now appreciate having the teeth, right, to really kind of support it and move it forward. Would you agree, Joellen?
I would. Yeah. So we, of course, in support of the DEIA, we implemented a course, developing and implementing a culture of diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility. But that's just a course. You have to do work to change the mindset. You've got to drive change other ways. And so in addition to, the pure training component, to impart the skills and the ideas and the concepts, we've also then expanded our coaching activities. So we've established an internal coaching program, and we've rolling out peer coaching as we speak for both the supervisory core and non-supervisory workforce. And, we have reiterated, the executive coaching component, and we partner with the Treasury Executive Institute and the Federal Coaches Network to make sure that our leaders know that coaching is available. We do 360s to make sure that our leaders are getting feedback. And then, we work with them to make sure that they're able to address any developmental areas that come out of that feedback. And, just a bunch of additional initiatives to try to get at how do we treat one another with courtesy, dignity, and respect. Cultural bias, right? How do we identify culture and address in a productive, positive way biases, right? We all have them, and recognizing that we all have them, and that it's okay to say that we all have them, but that we have to figure out how to address them is kind of, in my mind, one of those first steps. So those are just some of the things that we've been trying to pursue at SBA.
It's good to hear. Looking at the chat, I'm going to try and, so we've had a couple comments, questions. The average workday, like time from an average employee's workday, have you seen any shifts, any change? I mean, in the private sector, my kind of core hours are a little less important, but there's a comment about, eating through in between lunch, over lunch hour. Agree, a huge difficulty. And so I wonder, for your own employees, is the kind of amount of time that they're in the office or working changing? Are core work hours changing at all in your organizations? And maybe I'll start with you, Joellen, or LBB, go ahead. Looks like you had something.
So yeah, so honestly, I think that especially coming within COVID, folks have expanded their work days. The one thing that we have to remind them, apologies, y'all, allergies. One thing that I have to constantly remind folks, though, is to eat lunch, right? Make it important to eat lunch. And I'm sorry, Joelle, I'm getting a cough spell. Take it over for one moment.
No problem. So part of that mindfulness series, one of the sessions was absolutely about being kind to yourself, absolutely about remembering the importance of lunch, the importance of getting up and walking, because, I've heard more than one employee, and I'm included in the number, teleworking, we can sit for 8 hours and literally just sit and not move. That's not healthy. That's not healthy. It's not healthy if you're in the office. It's not healthy at home. And so the importance of movement, we try to reinforce. And I think that's one of the reasons that we try to be flexible. I will say that with the flexibilities brought on, the workplace flexibilities and the telework flexibilities for at least my team, I'll speak to my team. There has been a little bit of a shift. Yes, we have core hours, but the team does shift somewhat to make sure that, hey, I've got a class happening. Now it's virtual, which means we have West Coast people, or maybe people in Alaska or Hawaii. So the class is later in the day. Well, my expectation, if they're going to be monitoring or managing that class, is not that they start their day at their normal work time at 7 a.m. or whatever and work into the evening. No, my expectation is that to the degree that you can, you shift your hours to cover what we need to cover. So that's kind of where I'm seeing the slight shifts and changes.
Mm-hmm. Work-life balance, definitely. I try sometimes. My team teases me because they'll hear me walking. I call it a walking meeting. So I'll put the phone in my ear and like, okay, because the one thing that I learned just personally for me, I started getting very winded because I was sitting at my desk all day. So if I was in the building, I would be moving around, I would be going to lunch, I'd be doing things like that. And so I started making it a thing to my folks to say, hey, let's have a walking meeting. Everybody grab a phone, let's connect, let's have a conversation. Because that has a different effect on you, right, as an employee. When you think, oh, well, why are my legs hurting? Why am, what is going on here? Because you're not getting the proper circulation. And it goes back to that performance thing that we talked about. If people understand what their expectations are, they're clear, and you know for sure that they support the mission, you don't have to micromanage your folks. You can give them, like Joellen said, you can give them the task. They're gonna work their schedule to make sure that the task gets done.
We're circling around this performance, accountability, the role of the manager, which leads us perfectly into this next question, which is really how do we rethink and redefine the role of the employee, the supervisor, or even the leader in this new world of work? Maybe we'll just focus on the manager for now. LVV, maybe you could start us off with just your view of those things.
So I want to ensure that my managers are capable and have what they need to do their job in this changing work environment, because it's changing. Pretty soon we're going to have almost 7 different generations in the workforce, and that requires you to be different to each person. It's what always comes to mind to me is situational leadership, right? So that was an old corn term. Joellen remembers this term, right? But it's coming back. It's coming back in full circle, because you got to be able to meet LBB based on LBB's needs, the mission, and the focus. We can no longer put our employees in a box and say, okay, here are the widgets. We're going to throw the widgets in and everybody take a widget and we're going to go. Because what I have to do with my widget and what you may have to do, Jarrett, for your widget, and what Joellen has to do for her widget may tend to be a different widget. And it goes back to that diversity inclusiveness. So why not, as managers, start there? I think a lot of times we've been, okay, well, here's the task I need done. Here's how I want you to do it, and you go. I see managers now saying, okay, let's have a conversation. So this is the task. Okay, Derek, what do you see? How do you think we should address this? Joellen, how do you think that we should address this? It's that servant leadership and kind of doing it collaboratively together. And in the energy that you get for involving all of these minds, it's just powerful. And I think that's where we are moving towards as it relates to developing our managers and leaders.
Yeah, it definitely has been a transition. Management by walking around. Everybody remembers that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it really was about managing by butts and seats, because you're walking around to see who's at their desk and what are they doing. Mm-hmm. And as long as they were at their desk and looked busy, I think the assumption was productivity was happening and work was getting done. And, for years, we've been talking about, I don't care in this particular environment. If I was in a manufacturing environment, absolutely, widgets matter in a manufacturing environment. In my work environment, it isn't necessarily about the widgets, it's about the result of the widgets. And so, preaching to the supervisors and managers, the importance of managing by results and making sure that you're working with your staff to set realistic goals and measure them in a meaningful way. So at the end of the year, they know the so what behind all of their efforts. Yeah. It was an uphill battle. And then here we have people in a virtual environment, and you can't manage by butts and seats anymore because people are virtual. And so what if you call me and I answer the phone? you still have no idea what I'm doing. So it, in a way, it has helped us drive the point home of the importance of looking at results, setting realistic goals, setting meaningful measurements, and then really, really focusing on the so what behind the work being done. So,
yeah.
So possibly some of that kind of employee manuals or the mindset maybe of the old way potentially is a barrier to kind of the way to manage in the future, or it's been a struggle to kind of manage in that new way?
So employees manuals and handbooks, I don't think they're a barrier for me. I will say in my mind, I don't know that the manuals and handbooks themselves are a barrier. I think that honestly, it is important that we have good documentation and processes so that we can have continuity across, what work is being done. What I am seeing is that most of them need to be updated because they're very old and outdated, and so that's been a press. But I don't see them as barriers. I think what has been, and may not necessarily be as much now, but what has been a barrier is that idea that, if you're not in a brick and mortar office, you can't possibly be productive. And I have data to refute that. I mean, the government did not fall apart. We've worked and we've delivered, we've helped people. And, absolutely, the mission has continued to be met a lot. So, that's been done in a virtual environment. And so the argument that bodies have to be in a specific location all the time just isn't holding for me. That does not mean that there aren't scenarios where the bringing people together isn't important, because I think it is. I just think we're headed down a path where it's different. When and how we physically engage in the same place, to me, is changing.
LBB, I think I heard you at the start. We were talking about a topic, and you said managers manage, right? But your managers manage. So is there ways that maybe you guys are focusing training and learning on making sure managers know how to effectively lead these distributed teams? Maybe less hard skills and some of the other ways that they know how they're going to manage these distributed teams?
So one of the softwares that we have within our CLC has several courses identified in there to help managers learn how to lead virtually, learn how to lead distributed teams. And surprisingly, it's one of our top attended trainings by our supervisor. So we was very excited to hear that, because we do know that, that's why I said give some supervisors some grace, because they had to change on a dime. We all did. Like, we were in one week and the next week we were all home and no one knew what was going on. And so, but being sure that, we stay forward thinking and saying, okay, well, what are our managers going to need, to change this thing? Because we've always provided the HR basics, right? I think would you agree, Joellen? Every organization does pretty good at doing the HR basics.
Absolutely.
I think where we need to continue to refocus and re-strategize is what they like to call the soft skills. I call it professional development, the leadership development piece, because you don't always get that in the supervisory training. The supervisory training talks about the policies and what to do, and it gives you this straight on the board. The leadership development side is going to give you the people side. It's going to give you, how do I interact with my folks? How do I have those strategic conversations if LBB is not on her job, and not be afraid that she's not going to like what I say, because sometimes you have to give your employees tough love. It just happens. But if you do it from a place of understanding and you have that conversation with them, they know that you're trying to do the best for them and get the best from them. And I think sometimes, in the past, those lines might have been blurred a little bit, but we in the training community try to continue to help give our supervisors the tools to be able to be successful in managing that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the areas where we've only scratched the surface, we're continuing to press on it, is the idea of the hybrid workforce, where you have some people in the office and some people teleworking, and how to make sure from an equity, inclusion, accessibility perspective that people are equally engaged. There is a real concern that, because I can see Derek, I'm going to go to Derek. Derek's going to get the special projects. Derek's going to get all my attention. Derek's going to be my right-hand person because Derek is here and Derek is available. And so we are constantly pushing forward the message to supervisors that, you have to make sure that you are engaging folks equally and regularly. And, when you're having a meeting, I'll use my team as an example. We had a discussion, I think late last year, about path forward with our team meetings. Now that some of us are in the office and some of us are teleworking. And as a team, we agreed, you know what, we are going to continue our virtual team meetings. Whether we're in the office or not, it may sound silly, but we gather virtually because that levels the playing field. It puts us all in the same room, so to speak. And no matter where someone is, we're all engaging equally, so to speak. And that's kind of one of the ways that we're trying to teach supervisors to, make sure that you are aware of what's going on in your hybrid workforce. Make sure that you're aware of how you're engaging, not just the people that you can physically see, but the people that are virtual as well. Have agreements. I see somebody in the chat, Ruth, talks about an agreement with her supervisor regarding after hours emails. That's been another area that we've had to tackle, with employees kind of giving feedback that, hey, I get emails at all hours. Well, I'm guilty. Okay. Sometimes I work at all hours and I send emails, and I've had to share with my folks, you don't have to read it. Okay. My expectation is you're not going to see it until the morning. And so usually if I send an after hours email, it says good morning, because I'm expecting you to read it in the morning. It may not be morning when it gets sent, but I'm not expecting you to read it until the morning. And so that's an expectation that I've clarified with my workforce. And so we teach our supervisors, again, to communicate, to make sure. And that's been probably, I don't know, LB, I don't know if you'd agree, but I think communication has probably been the key skill that we have kind of just hammered over the last 2 years. Communication, to make sure that people are, again, engaging people with dignity and courtesy and respect.
Yeah, and inclusiveness, I would add that.
And inclusiveness, thank you, yes.
Agreed.
We're on the topic of kind of managers and employees and best practices. What about cameras? Has that been an issue anywhere where employees, I don't want to put my camera on? It's a great topic. Everyone loves this. And there's probably rules around what can and can't be done. But I'm curious if you've got any sentiment from your employees about cameras.
There has been, I think there has been a mixed sentiment, because, if your senior leader says, okay, I need everybody to have their cameras on in this meeting, then you put your camera on. For me, if I'm meeting with folks, it's kind of like, if this is not an interactive discussion and I'm just giving you information, I don't, once you log on and say, hi, hey, LBB, I'm here, you can turn your camera off, especially considering, I know a lot of folks have young children, they have lives, they have husbands, some people are sharing spaces, right? And so, it goes back to that thing I said, individual, right? So for LBB, she may have an office that she doesn't have to share, but Joellen may have to share office with her husband. So it's kind of like, okay, well, do we want to kind of see Joellen's husband in the back while we're trying to conduct meetings? Maybe, maybe not. I think that it really becomes a comfortability for some folks, and it goes back to knowing your employees. because if you know your employees, you kind of know the ones who are not going to have a problem turning their camera on and being present, and the ones who are kind of like, I'm kind of camera shy, because let's be honest, people have been, I don't have to do that commute. And I think it was John that said it, the commute. I don't have that anymore if I'm still working from home. So literally I can get up 30 minutes before I'm supposed to log on, shower, dress, get me some coffee, and be at the thing. And I may or may not, do something with my lovely hair. I might put a bonnet on it, and just working, because I know I'm not going to be on the camera. And so it's just kind of preference. I think it's become, some managers are like, I want to see everybody, and some managers is like, I just need you to be present and engaged, because the other piece that I kind of think about is where people live. And so bandwidth can be a real challenge for some folks, because if you live in the woods, and you have your camera on for 8 or 9 hours out of the day, that pulls a lot of bandwidth. And as we well know, there are not a lot of internet folks out there that are doing all-inclusive internet anymore. So that, is a cost that the employees are expending. So just got to be cognizant of the employees' needs, I think.
Yeah, our supervisors are kind of all over the place with that. You have some that for whom it is very, very important. We've had the discussion that, many of us, turning your camera on in a virtual meeting is the equivalent of walking into the room. You're here. For others, it's like, no, I see Michael's name. That means Michael's here. And as long as Michael, engages and speaks up when asked, for opinions or whatnot, I know Michael's here. So it is a personal preference thing. And I'm very anxious and curious to see kind of where things fall out down the road. We kind of vacillate. We go both. We try to encourage cameras, but to LBB's point, if the technology is not cooperating, everybody cameras off, because we just need the bandwidth to be able to communicate. There are days when my camera's working, but you can't hear me because something's going on with our network. And so versatility and contingency have become our friends. I always have the phone number to include this meeting, and please, Murphy, don't do it. I do have the phone number for this meeting. So if something happens, I'm going to grab my cell phone and call in so that I have that. And that's something that we've kind of taught folks, but still haven't gotten to consistency on, cameras on, cameras off.
Yeah.
Murphy's Law. I love how you quoted Murphy there, Joellen. That's great. That's great. A can or a must. Yeah, I think anyone being told they must turn their camera on is uncomfortable. I try can and must, and with my 3.5-year-old, when I say, can you do this, it works a lot better versus must. You must take a shower or a bath. So, we all just have to remember what it's like to talk to 3 and 4-year-olds, right? And then I think as employees and managers, we all get along better. Well, let's see what we have from the audience at this point in time. We do not have any remaining questions that I had prepared for you guys. So let's see what we have out there.
What, Derek? We got through all of them?
Well, I think once Murphy and COVID took out one of our panelists, right, our time kind of expectations shifted a little bit. But yes, I'm surprised as well that we even had this much time left. So let's see, question from the audience. Curious to know how you have asked your employees about their oh, we already got that one, I think, didn't we? Got that one. Yep, Marlena, we covered that. Let's see.
Linda.
Pedro. Oh, Linda.
Yeah, Pedro, did you see Linda Hill's question on shadowing? She said, we're trying a shadowing program, small at first, then maybe more if successful. To what degree have we done this in our organizations?
Yeah, great one.
Yeah, that is great, especially in the virtual environment. And honestly, this has been wonderful. Again, we just had kind of that precursor conversation that we had drove the point home when Joe was like, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, people in the field, especially in very rural environments, it was hard for them to be able to really get opportunities for details and assignments and things like that outside of their local area. And really moving to a more flexible environment with remote options and details that don't have to be face-to-face has kind of, begun to level that playing field and really increase, again, the ability to offer equitable opportunities, inclusive opportunities, and increase access for folks. And so, I personally think if we were going to pull up any positives out of our experience over the last 2 years, that increase in engaging folks outside of the local commuting area and being able to bring people in on whether detail assignments or temporary assignments or permanent placement from other areas has, in my mind, been a boon for the federal government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I second that. We actually experienced that because when we went out in COVID, we had a SES CDP program going on, and I had several folks who were not in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. So we really had to work with our vendors to switch on a dime. And they also had the opportunity to do their rotational assignments virtually. So, imagine walking into an organization that you've never really met a person, but over computer. But some of them absolutely loved it. And, they stepped up to the challenge. And so I just go back to say, I agree with Joellen 100%. This has actually given us opportunity because I think a lot of organizations have folks in the field and we sometimes don't get to interact with them. So now having this technology in place, I think it's really encouraged and increased the communication across. And I'm hoping that it will continue to build more in the future, as some of the organizations tend to build programs. I know we're looking at the federal coaching program, for example, and they had an opportunity to offer organization across to folks everywhere to participate in that program. And it also gave them an opportunity to increase the number of people that they were able to train because it was virtual. So, technology will always kind of be but we do have some positives about being in a hybrid environment.
We got a couple other questions in here, and Pedro, I wanted to get to yours too as well. He had a specific questions about being a field level agent and getting some specific communication with senior leaders, and any recommendations, just kind of what to do if he's struggling for communication or outreach.
Again, it goes back to that, contingency and versatility. Where there's a will, there's a way. Now, what I don't know, Pedro, I don't know exactly your scenario. And so if it's an issue of like secure communications, that throws a wrench into things. But if it's just in general communications, then, I would say by all means, it's a conversation with leaders about how can we do this? If the computer isn't working, is there a landline? Is there a telephone? Is there a Dropbox electronic Dropbox where we could possibly maybe exchange, maybe not real time, but exchange communications back and forth? I'm not sure how remote you are. I definitely feel for you if you are so remote that you can't get regular communications from your senior leaders. But I would say that, again, I would encourage engaging your OCIO and coming up with a solution. Having worked in several different federal agencies with folks extremely remote and, so remote we didn't even know where they are sometimes, communication still happened.
And I'm going to flip it a little bit on you, Pedro, because I think you are passionate about it. So I would implore you to become the champion, because I'm sure that if you're experiencing that, there are probably several other people who are experiencing the same thing who just haven't had a conversation with it. Join a community of practice, create a community of practice, and try to solve that solution. Provide that solution for your organization. We know that every organization is different and you have, there's rules that you may have to play in, right? But there's nothing stopping you from doing the research, becoming the champion, developing a group, and really sharing what you found with senior leadership to bring it to their attention.
A great recommendation, LBB. And what are, for the future of work that it seems like we're heading towards, and the current state of L&D, what would you say some of the biggest challenges that remain, and kind of merging those two things, Joellen?
I think, again, LBB brought it up. She said SES CDP. I think from a learning and development, organizational development perspective, there are some scenarios, honestly, that still lend themselves better to face-to-face engagement. And so coming up with solutions for how we do those things. Again, we're doing peer-to-peer coaching virtually. I never would have thought that possible, but we talked through it, we strategized, and we said, we're going to try it. We're going to try peer-to-peer coaching virtually. But team building, somebody asked a question about team building, some creative techniques. I'm getting ready to do a session in just, I think, 2 weeks. That is a team building session where I'm going to engage, organizational leadership and their direct reports, and we're going to do a team building virtually. Can it be done? Sure, we're going to try and do it. We've done 1 or 2 over the last 2 years, but making sure that we're doing it in such a way that's engaged. I think one of the barriers continues to be technology, making sure we have the right tools and that we have the ability to use them. Because I will tell you, I'm still learning. I'm learning how to do the whiteboarding seamlessly. I'm learning how to launch breakout sessions seamlessly. And so making sure that we're working on our own skills gaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
while we're trying to address the others that's a real thing.
Yeah. Very real.
Yeah.
What do you think, LBB? Is there, if you could, I guess, change one thing, or if there's one thing that worries you or keeps you up at night when you think about the future of work and maybe the future of L&D and those things coming together, is there kind of one barrier or blocker that you could see being a?
I don't know if there's a barrier, but what I would love to change is the mindset. Because I really, and we talk about this at our council, sometimes I feel like L&D, we're always the last seat at the table, and we support just about every function, and so and that's one thing as a council, we've been heavily engaging, trying to have that seat at the table to be able, because a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, LBB is not doing what she's supposed to do, we're going to send her to training. Well, no, because it might not be training. She might have already taken this training 2 or 3 times. So, I always try to challenge supervisors and managers, like if you're sending your employee to something that like project management, perfect example. You send folks through to training for that long procedures program, but you don't put the application piece in place for them to obtain the information that they learn. And so it's the mindset shift that, training is here to support. We definitely will help you if there are challenges that have been identified, but we are not the fixer of all things. We support you to help you fix what needs to happen, but have a conversation with us. Just don't say, oh, well, she messed it up, she needs to go to training. No, because it could very well be there's something going on in LBB's life personally that just has her completely and totally distracted, which is why having that connection and understanding your people, it is so that mindset of not being afraid to be vulnerable around your folks and let them know that you're superhuman, but you can take the cape off. Sometimes you just have to put that face on, like, because I will tell y'all, I'm sorry, I'm not having a good day today. It did not start off great. And one of those days was yesterday, dealing with traffic. It did not start out great. Give me a moment so I can get my coffee, get myself together, because I don't want to take my frustrations out on you because I'm having a bad day. That honest, candid conversation with our folks, people appreciate it. you know. And so I just think that the more that we lock in step with everyone and they look as us as their support and not the person that fixes all the things that are broken, I think that will change, you know, how we move forward in L&D.
Yeah, not just throwing things over the fence, I think is always a good recommendation, and taking accountability. Have you guys, has either of you seen some creative techniques for team building? I'm trying to think some of maybe that I've seen. We had a question from the audience, if there were any recommendations or potential techniques for team building that you've seen.
Virtual versus.
I guess we could be either. Yeah, we could, if we're, well, yeah, like our managers and employees going to lunches, or virtual would probably be more beneficial to this audience, if you have any.
So what I would say, so we, when we do team building here at SBA, one of the things that we do, we focus on the model that is outlined in McMillan's book, The Performance Factor. And so the high performance team model. And we have a webinar training series around that high performance team model. And so all of our team building actually did lend itself to transitioning to the virtual environment. So the team building activities that go on there, we're able to transition virtually. And, you know, one of the simple, quick ones I'll just outline is giving them the visual of a boat. And on the boat, you have a certain number of triangles, and each triangle represents somebody rowing on the boat. And 3 of those triangles are pointed in different directions from everybody else. All the other triangles are pointed forward, with the assumption that if anybody rows, just go with the analogy. Okay, I'm aware that it's a little bit flawed analogy, but they're pointed forward with the analogy that they're all rowing in that direction. They may not be facing in that direction, because we know that we face backwards from the direction that we're rowing, but they're pointed in the direction that they're rowing. The 3 that are not pointed in that direction are in various stages of disarray. You know, one's pointed sideways, one's just a little off, one's pointed toward the back, and you engage the team in the discussion about which triangle is going to cause the most damage to the team's ability to meet the mission. And so it really is just a discussion. Sounds kind of crazy. It's just a discussion, but the aha is that it's not the triangle that's pointed in the exact opposite direction, and it's not the triangle that's pointed off to the side. It's the triangle that's only about 10 or 20 degrees off from straight ahead that can cause the most disruption to the team meeting its goal. And then you have the discussion around why. So raising that awareness actually, it's right behind me. That high performance team model is what's on the blackboard behind me. So raising team awareness about alignment and people all being willing to embrace the mission or the purpose of the team is kind of where we start. And then we do other exercises off of that. Happy to share with anybody who's interested. So I'll just be quiet then.
That was a great one. Anything you've practiced or been a part of LBB that you thought was something with a good experience related to team building?
So actually, I did this with the Federal Chief Learning Officers Council during our strategy meeting, and it was an exercise where, and it was really quick, but I think it got folks talking and learning a lot about each other, and it was about identifying your color. So your favorite color tells a lot about your personality. And so what we wanted to see is if people who picked their favorite colors, was it true? And I think about 85% of the folks was like, yeah, that is me, spot on. And so, but it really got the conversation going. People were kind of laughing. And so I made it almost like a event. It was like, okay, go Team Blue. Team Blue is leading. Who else is going to come up? So, just really trying to have fun, because it is kind of stressful trying to keep a group together, right? When everybody is virtual and, they may or may not have their cameras on. But what I feel is if you bring the positive energy, then they'll follow suit with the positive energy. And it goes back to something we said earlier. It's engagement. Engagement is not new. We just have to repackage it and bring it back to the top and make it sing.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, we're constantly kind of forgetting what we learn, right? So you have to keep it engaging. And I mean, the audience may remember 15% or 20% of our discussion even this afternoon, right, that we just had. So keeping the energy up always is always, I think, gonna do well for the majority of the audience and employees. So thank you for that feedback. Looking at our chat, I don't believe we have any more questions. Anything top of mind for either of you before we let you go?
I would just say that, you know, for everybody who did not count it robbery to plug in today, I hope they got, you know, something helpful that they can take away. I think we are embracing change as it happens. We're continuing to learn from one another. LBB and Susan are phenomenal chairs of the CLO Council. And, you know, that council has, yes. That council has embraced the need to share and to make sure that we are sharpening one another and that we're promoting best practices, we're sharing best practices, promising practices. And so I applaud you, Derek, and the team for having this session to give us an opportunity to chat and, you know, look forward to doing more of that. I can't stress more the importance that we share with one another, and that, you know, we be willing to, you know, reach out and give back.
I second
LBB,
that.
final, yeah, go, please,
Yeah,
please.
I second that. I think the only thing that we were missing today was our other part of the triangle, and that was Matisha. So the one thing that if I can leave you guys with this thought. So for those of you, and this is another thing that we're kind of working on, we understand that in each organization, learning falls under kind of like a different person. Sometimes it's the chief learning officer, sometimes it's director of training, whatever the title is. We want you guys to understand that we appreciate everything that you guys do. We know that we can't get it done without the people in the seats that are making things happen. And learning and development is the most important, I think, in the structure of the federal government. Yes, I said it. Because we are, the one thing that we are always passionate about is making sure that our people have what they need, good, bad, or indifferent. You know, we deal with it all. We want to make sure that we are providing a space for folks, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to just share some nuggets of wisdom, because the more that we get an opportunity to talk about the things that we do, I think it increases the support that we get, and just makes us just want to be great. And that's all we ever want to do in the learning and development community, is be great and create greatness. That's what we're here to do. So thank you all for this opportunity, for being here today.
Well said. And that kind of spirit of sharing, I want to thank ACT-IAC as well, that, you know, all collaborating in a transparent way, letting the audience get involved in Q&A. And, you know, it feels like we're all together in this time when transparency and trust are sometimes hard to find when groups of folks come together from different organizations. So with that, I think we'll close here. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day. And if there's no final announcements from Terry, we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
I think we're good. Thank you all. Appreciate your attending, and thank you so much, Joellen and LBB.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
Take care, everybody. Be healthy.
Bye-bye.